He lost everything 16 years ago, his wife, his son, and the life he once knew. But when he walks into a crowded marketplace one ordinary afternoon, he sees a face he thought he'd never see again. A face that hides a truth so painful it will shatter everything he believed about love, loss, and destiny. What really happened that night? Why did she disappear? And who turned his own son into his greatest enemy? Stay with me till the very end, because this story will break your heart, heal it again, and make you believe in love that never dies. Red heart if you feel every beat of this story, if your heart still believes in truth, forgiveness, and love. Then subscribe now. Join our family, because here every story will make you feel. The afternoon sun was cruel. Its heat shimmered over the cracked pavement outside the old market. Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow as he stepped through the crowd. Voices tangled together, vendors shouting, coins clinking, children laughing. He had come here by chance, chasing a memory that felt like a dream. A faint scent of grilled corn and dust hung in the air. Then, amid the noise, he saw her. A woman sitting behind a small wooden table. Stacks of colorful lottery tickets spread neatly before her. Her hands were thinner now, her hair streaked with gray. For a moment, Daniel froze. His chest tightened as if the air had turned to stone. 16 years had passed, yet he knew that face instantly. It was her. Lena, the woman who once shared his home, his laughter, his future. His throat burned as he approached. Each step felt heavier, slower. The sound of his shoes scraping the ground echoed like thunder in his ears. She looked up. Their eyes met, and the years between them collapsed into silence. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Daniel tried to speak, but his voice failed. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a few coins, and placed them on the table. "I will take one," he said quietly. Her fingers brushed his as she handed him a ticket. They trembled, his with guilt, hers with something deeper. Something fragile, like regret mixed with fear. A boy ran past, laughing, holding a toy airplane. The sound broke the stillness between them. Lena lowered her eyes. "I am sorry," she whispered. Her voice carried the weight of years unsaid. Daniel felt the world tilt. He wanted to ask why she had vanished. Why she had left without a word, without goodbye. But then he saw it. A photograph, tucked beneath the edge of the lottery pile. A young man in uniform, smiling faintly, with eyes that mirrored his own. The truth began to stir behind his ribs, sharp and cold. The air around him thickened. The marketplace noise faded. He felt his pulse in his throat, fast and uneven. He reached for the photo, his fingers shaking. Lena tried to stop him, but he had already seen. The name printed on the corner of the picture made his vision blur. It was his own last name. The ticket slipped from his hand. The coins rolled across the ground. And Daniel understood why she had disappeared all those years ago. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered the words he feared to hear. "They told me you were dead." He could not move. He could not breathe. The world spun, and the years fell apart around him. The crowd swirled, but he heard nothing now. Only the sound of his heartbeat, breaking itself open. And before he could speak, Lena reached out, gripping his arm. Her touch was cold. Her voice trembled with the truth that would shatter him completely. Her hand clutched his arm tightly, as if she were holding onto the last piece of something fragile and dying. Her nails pressed against his skin, trembling. Her breath came in short, uneven bursts. "Daniel," she said, her voice quivering like a wounded bird, "there is something you must know before you hate me." The sound of her words pierced through him. He stood there, unable to respond, his heartbeat roaring in his ears like distant thunder. The marketplace around them faded into a blur. Faces turned ghostly, voices muffled, colors drained. Only the two of them remained, suspended in a moment that refused to move forward. Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. The heat of the afternoon seemed to vanish, replaced by a chilling wind that touched only them. He could feel his hands shaking, his throat tightening, his mind screaming for answers he was too afraid to hear. Lena's eyes shimmered with tears, reflecting all the years that had carved lines across her face. She took a slow breath, her shoulders trembling. "When I left," she whispered, "it was not because I wanted to. I was forced." Daniel's stomach clenched. "Forced?" His voice cracked, low and disbelieving. "Who forced you?" Her gaze dropped to the photograph again. The boy in uniform, his faint smile hauntingly familiar. "I was pregnant, Daniel," she said softly. Her words landed like stones in his chest. "I found out only days before the fire, before they said you were gone." The air rushed from his lungs. He staggered backward, his knees threatening to give way. His mind flooded with the memory of that night. The factory explosion, the flames, the chaos, the screams. He remembered running, the smoke, the pain, the moment everything went dark. "They told me no one survived," Lena continued. "I went to the hospital. I searched for you for weeks. But they said your body had been burned beyond recognition. They buried someone else under your name." Daniel stared at her, numb, as her words wrapped around his mind like vines of fire. 16 years of silence, of wondering, of blaming. He had survived the fire, but he had never survived losing her. "I wanted to tell you I was alive," he said, his voice trembling. "I wrote letters when I recovered. I sent them to your mother's address. No one ever answered." Lena's eyes widened. Her lips parted in disbelief. "They told me you wanted nothing to do with me," she said faintly. "They said you remarried, that you left the country, that you—" Her voice broke. Her hands flew to her face as tears spilled down her cheeks. "They lied to both of us," she cried, her voice shaking. "They wanted us apart. I did not know who to trust. I had no money, no home. I sold what I could. And when the boy was born, I swore I would give him a life, even if it meant living in the shadows." Daniel's chest ached with every breath. He looked at the photograph again, the boy's eyes, the shape of his jaw, the faint dimple on the left cheek. His heart recognized what his mind could barely grasp. "That is my son," he whispered. Lena nodded slowly. Her tears fell silently onto the table, darkening the edges of the lottery tickets. "He grew up believing his father died a hero," she said softly. "I never told him the truth. I did not want him to hate a world that took everything from us." Daniel felt something deep inside him break. All those years he had cursed fate, blamed himself for losing her. He had built a life from ashes, carrying a grief he could never name. And now here she was, broken, worn, but alive, selling hope to strangers in the form of numbered paper slips. The world around them began to blur again as people passed, unaware of the storm that raged between two souls. Daniel took a slow, shuddering breath. "I need to see him," he said. "Where is he now?" Lena's face twisted with pain. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white. He does not know I am here," she said. "He joined the army last year. He sends me money whenever he can. I have not told him that I am sick." Daniel's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly, but her eyes were empty. "The doctor said it is too late," she whispered. Her hand pressed lightly against her chest. "Something in my lungs. I do not have much time left." Daniel felt his legs weaken. He wanted to scream, to fight against the invisible weight pressing down on them both. He reached out, taking her hand in his for the first time in 16 years. It was cold, thin, but familiar, the same hand that once rested against his cheek in the quiet of their old life. "Why did you not tell someone?" he asked, voice breaking. "Why did you not ask for help?" She smiled again, soft and tired. "Because I wanted him to be proud," she said. "Because I wanted you to find peace, even if it meant you forgot me." Daniel's tears fell freely now. He felt his heart unravel, every memory, every promise, every lost year flooding back. He wanted to hold her, to rewind time, to scream at the world that stole them from each other. The marketplace noise slowly returned, the calls of vendors, the buzz of life continuing around them. But for Daniel, the world had narrowed to the small wooden table, the trembling woman before him, and the truth that had cost them everything. He knelt beside her. I never forgot you, he whispered. Not one single day. Lena's eyes closed as a tear slipped down her cheek. Her fingers brushed his hair as if she were remembering the man he used to be. You came back, she murmured. That is enough. But Daniel shook his head. It will never be enough, he said. Not until our son knows the truth. Not until he sees what they did to us. Lena opened her eyes slowly. For the first time in years, there was a flicker of light within them. Hope. Faint but alive. He deserves to know, she whispered. But Daniel, her voice faltered. There is something else. Something I never told anyone. The fire, your disappearance, it was no accident. Daniel's eyes widened. What are you saying? Lena's grip on his hand tightened. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. They wanted you gone. Someone paid for that explosion. The noise of the market vanished once again, swallowed by silence. Daniel stared at her, frozen, the truth settling over him like a shadow with no end. And in that moment, he realized the past had not finished with them yet. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The words echoed inside his mind, burning like sparks falling into dry leaves. Someone paid for it. The sentence would not stop ringing. His hands went cold. He stared at Lena, her frail body trembling under the weight of a truth she had carried alone for 16 long years. The market around them continued to hum, vendors shouting, children laughing, a motorcycle revving in the distance, but to Daniel, everything had gone hollow. He could hear only the sound of her breathing, uneven and fragile, as if each inhale might be her last. He leaned closer, his voice raw. Who, Lena? Who did this? Her eyes darted around, fear flickering in them like a candle about to die. She hesitated, her lips trembling. Daniel, I promised I would never speak his name, she whispered. If I do, they might come back. They watch even now. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. He felt the old rage begin to awaken, the same fire that once consumed him after the factory explosion, the same emptiness that had kept him awake for years, staring into the dark. He had accepted loss, but betrayal, this was something else. His voice dropped, low and trembling. Lena, you have to tell me. I lost 16 years. I lost you. I lost my son. I deserve to know who took everything from us. She looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold the entire weight of her suffering. Her lips parted, but the words came out barely audible. It was your boss, Daniel. Mr. Craven. The name hit him like a blow to the chest. He staggered back, gripping the edge of the table to steady himself. Mr. Craven, the man who had given him a job when he was young, the man he had trusted more than anyone else. The man who had called him son. Lena's voice trembled as she continued. He wanted your project. The new design you created for the fuel system. He said it would make him millions. You refused to sell it. You said it was not safe, that it could cause an explosion. He laughed. He said if you would not give it to him willingly, he would take it. Daniel's mind reeled. He remembered that final day at the factory, the argument, the shouting, Craven's cold stare. And then the explosion that had swallowed everything. Lena's tears streaked down her cheeks. He came to me after the fire, she said. He told me you were dead. He gave me money, told me to leave the city. He said if I ever asked questions, if I ever spoke your name again, he would make sure our child suffered for it. Daniel's jaw clenched until it hurt. He could barely see through the blur of fury and grief. All this time, he had thought fate was cruel. He had blamed chance, accident, destiny. But now he knew it was greed, calculated, deliberate, human. He knelt beside her again, gripping her hand. Why did you never tell anyone? The police, the press, someone would have listened. Her head shook weakly. No one would believe me. He had power. He had men everywhere. I tried once, someone followed me home. They broke my window, left a note. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. It said, next time, we burn what is left of you. Daniel felt something break inside him. He pressed her hand to his lips, his tears falling onto her skin. I will not let them win, he said. I will find him, Lena. I will make him see what he destroyed. Lena's eyes filled again, a mix of fear and sorrow. Daniel, do not go after him.
Please.
He has friends in every corner. You will disappear again, and this time, you will not come back. He shook his head slowly, his gaze steady. I have already disappeared once, he said. This time, I am coming back for everything he stole. A gust of wind swept through the marketplace, lifting the edges of the lottery tickets into the air. They fluttered like fragile wings before scattering across the pavement. Lena coughed softly, her body shaking. Daniel caught her before she fell. Her voice was faint, a whisper that trembled on the edge of breath. If anything happens to me, promise you will find our son. Tell him the truth. Tell him his father fought for something real. Daniel nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He held her hand, feeling the warmth slipping from it. The sunlight dimmed behind passing clouds, casting long shadows over the market stalls. Then, from across the street, Daniel noticed a man standing still among the crowd. Tall, wearing a dark suit and sunglasses. He was not buying anything, not looking around. Just watching. The hair on Daniel's arm stood on end. He turned to Lena. Her eyes had gone wide with dread. She whispered, "They found me." Before Daniel could react, the man turned away, disappearing into the moving crowd. Daniel stood, his heart pounding, scanning the faces around him, but the stranger was gone. Only the echo of footsteps remained. Lena clutched his sleeve, her voice shaking. They never stopped watching, Daniel. That is why I stayed here selling tickets. It was the only place I could hide in plain sight. So many faces, no one would notice, one more ghost. He looked down at her trembling form, the woman he once loved, the mother of his son, the victim of a lie too monstrous to name. He realized then that their story was far from over. The fire 16 years ago had not been the end, it had been the beginning of something darker. He knelt again, his eyes burning. "Lena," he said softly, "I will find them. All of them. No one will ever hurt you again." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that belonged to someone who had already accepted her fate. Her voice cracked like paper as she whispered, "Promise me, Daniel. Do not lose yourself in vengeance. Our son needs a father, not a ghost." He pressed her hand to his heart. "I promise," he said, though a storm of fury raged beneath his calm voice. The wind carried the last of the lottery tickets down the street, scattering hope into the dust. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang, marking the hour. Daniel stood, staring after the man who had vanished into the crowd, his fists clenched at his sides. For 16 years, he had believed the past was buried. Now he knew it was alive and watching. Behind him, Lena whispered something he almost did not catch. The fire was only the first secret. Daniel turned sharply, but her eyes had closed, her breathing shallow, her body trembling in his arms. Tears burned his eyes as he whispered her name again and again, his voice cracking under the weight of too many lost years. And as her last tear fell onto his hand, Daniel made a silent vow. He would uncover every truth buried beneath the ashes. He would find their son, and he would make the men who destroyed their lives remember his name. Daniel held Lena against his chest as the life inside her trembled like the last flicker of a dying candle. Her breath came out shallow, uneven, the sound fragile enough to break at any moment. He could feel her heartbeat slowing beneath his hand, each thud fading like footsteps retreating down an endless hall. "Stay with me," he whispered, his voice breaking. His tears fell onto her face, mingling with the dust and sweat of the day. "Please, Lena, stay with me." Her lips moved, barely forming words. "You have to go," she whispered. "They will come for you now. You were never supposed to know." Daniel's grip tightened. He shook his head violently, refusing the reality pressing against him. "I will not leave you again. Not this time." Her hand lifted weakly, trembling as she brushed her fingers along his cheek. Her touch was cold, but her eyes, those eyes, still held the warmth of all the years they had lost. "Go," she said softly. "Find our son. Tell him who you are. Tell him why everything happened. Promise me, Daniel." "I promise," he whispered, his words catching in his throat. But it was too late. Her eyes fluttered one last time. Her lips parted as if to say his name. Then she went still. The noise of the market returned all at once. Laughter, footsteps, shouting, the clatter of coins. But to Daniel, the world had fallen silent. He sat there, holding her, feeling the warmth leave her body. The woman he had loved, the only truth he had left, was gone. He buried his face against her shoulder, his body shaking as grief tore through him. For 16 years he had lived with ghosts. Now the last one had died in his arms. But beneath the grief, something darker began to stir. It crawled up from the hollow pit in his chest and settled behind his ribs. It was not just sorrow. It was fury. He looked around. The faces of strangers blurred together, indifferent, curious, but unaware of what had just been taken from him. The man in the black suit was nowhere to be seen. The shadows around the market seemed to thicken, as if the very air knew danger still lingered nearby. Daniel gently laid Lena's body on the ground, folding her arms across her chest. He picked up the photograph that had fallen from the table, the young man in uniform, smiling faintly. His son. He stared at it until his vision blurred. Then, quietly, he slipped it into his pocket. When he stood, something inside him had changed. The man who had once been broken was gone. In his place stood something sharper, colder, a man with nothing left to lose. He turned and began to walk away from the market. The crowd parted around him, unaware of the storm that now walked among them. As he reached the corner, a voice called out behind him. "Daniel." He froze. The voice was deep, rough, unfamiliar. He turned slowly. A man approached, older, heavy-set, wearing a gray jacket. There was something about his eyes, something cautious but kind. "I am sorry," the man said quietly. "I saw what happened. She was here every day." Daniel said nothing. The man looked down at the body on the ground, then back at him. "She used to talk about you. Said one day you would come back. She never gave up." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but the words burned before they could form. The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "She told me to give you this if you ever came. Said it had to go straight to your hands." Daniel took it slowly. The envelope was old, its edges yellowed, the handwriting faint but unmistakable. His name, written in her hand. He opened it carefully. Inside was a folded letter and a key, small, rusted, marked with a number 47. The letter began simply. "My dearest Daniel, if you are reading this, then my time has ended before I could tell you everything. There is a box hidden in the place where we used to sit by the river, beneath the old willow tree. Inside it are the documents you will need, the proof of what Craven did, and the names of the men who helped him. You must be careful. They never stopped watching. Do not trust anyone who finds you first. Tell our son the truth when the time is right. He must know what kind of world he is fighting for. And remember, my love, not every fire destroys. Some fires are meant to bring light." Daniel's hands trembled as he read the final line. The words blurred through his tears. He looked down at the key again, the number engraved like a whisper of destiny. The man in the gray jacket watched him quietly. "Whatever is in that letter," he said softly, "you had better leave before they come back." Daniel nodded once. He turned and began to walk away, the letter clutched tightly in his hand. Behind him, the market noise faded into the distance. He walked through the narrow streets until the city gave way to silence. The sun began to sink, painting the world in gold and blood. Every step carried him closer to the river, a place that had lived only in his memories. When he reached the bank, the willow tree still stood, its branches hanging low, swaying gently in the wind. He knelt beneath it, the memories crashing over him. Lena's laughter, their son's first cries, the night they had carved their initials into the bark. He began to dig. The earth was hard, the roots thick, but he kept going until his fingers struck metal. A small box, rusted and heavy. He pulled it free, his hands shaking. He inserted the key. The lock clicked open with a sound that echoed in his chest. Inside were several old documents, blueprints, photos, and letters stamped with Craven's company seal. At the bottom was another envelope, thicker than the rest. He opened it, and his heart nearly stopped. Inside were photos of the factory floor the night before the explosion, men working after hours, crates of fuel stacked illegally, and Craven himself standing among them, smiling. But what froze Daniel's blood was the last picture. A younger man, standing beside Craven, holding a lighter. The same eyes, the same jawline. His son. The world tilted. Daniel's breath came fast and shallow. He dropped the photo, his mind spinning. No, it could not be. It was impossible. The handwriting on the back confirmed it. He never knew the truth. They raised him to believe you were the enemy. Daniel's knees hit the dirt. The sound of the river rushed in his ears like thunder. The son he had been searching for, the son he had sworn to protect, had become the weapon of the men who destroyed their lives. Tears burned his eyes as he clutched the photograph to his chest. The setting sun turned the river red, and for a moment, it looked as though the water itself bled for them. He whispered to the wind, voice breaking, "I will find you, my son, and I will save you before they destroy you too." The last light of day fell across his face as he rose from the ground. The letter, the photo, the key, all tucked close to his heart. Behind him, the willow's branches swayed, whispering secrets to the darkening air. And as the night settled in, Daniel vanished into the shadows. A father reborn, a man haunted by love, and a soul walking back into the fire to reclaim what fate had stolen. The night wrapped around Daniel like a shroud. The path beside the river twisted through the forest, lit only by the moon's reflection on the black water. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint scent of rain and something older, something like sorrow. His hands were still trembling. He could feel the weight of the letter in his pocket, the photograph pressing against his chest like a blade. His son, his own flesh and blood, standing beside the man who had destroyed their lives. Every step he took felt heavier, every breath a battle between disbelief and rage. The image refused to leave his mind, his son's eyes, the faint smile that mirrored his own, the cruel irony that the boy he had dreamed of finding had been turned into an enemy. Daniel reached the edge of town just as thunder began to roll in the distance. Lightning flashed across the sky, revealing the old road leading back to the city. He knew where he had to go. He had to find Craven. He had to see the man who had stolen not just his life, but his son's soul. But deep down, he feared what he might find. Because if Craven had turned his son against him, then the war Daniel was walking into would not be against the past. It would be against his own blood. He walked for hours. The rain came hard and fast, soaking through his clothes, washing the dirt from his hands, but not the weight from his heart. He followed the lights of the city until the factory's silhouette appeared, tall, black, a graveyard of steel and secrets. The building had been abandoned for years, yet Daniel felt eyes watching him from every shadow. He slipped inside through a broken door. The air smelled of oil and rust, the floor covered in shards of glass that glittered under flashes of lightning. He climbed the metal stairs to the office where he once worked, where Craven's lies had begun. The door creaked open, revealing a desk covered in dust and old papers. But something was wrong. The dust had been disturbed. Someone had been here recently. Then he saw it. On the wall, where the company logo once hung, a new symbol had been painted in red. A circle. Inside it, the number 16. The same number of years since the explosion. Daniel's breath caught. He turned slowly, and that was when he saw the envelope pinned to the door with a knife. His name was written across it in neat, deliberate handwriting. He pulled it free and unfolded the paper inside. The words made his skin crawl. "You were supposed to stay dead, Daniel. But since you have risen from the ashes, we will make sure you burn again. Meet us where it all began. Midnight. Come alone. Bring what you found." There was no signature, only a single initial, K. Craven. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. He could almost hear Lena's voice echoing in his mind, begging him not to go down this road, to think of their son, to stay alive. But there was no going back now. The truth demanded blood. He folded the letter and slipped it into his jacket. The rain outside had turned into a storm. Thunder shook the walls as he made his way out of the factory and back into the night. The meeting place was clear in his mind. The site of the explosion, the place where everything had ended 16 years ago. As he walked through the deserted streets, flashes of memory returned like ghosts. Lena's laughter, the heat of the flames, the moment his world had turned to ash. He reached the ruins just before midnight. The old factory grounds were overgrown with weeds and littered with twisted metal. Rain poured through the holes in the roof, hissing as it hit the broken concrete. Then he saw them. Two men standing beneath a flickering streetlight, and between them a third figure.
Young, tall,
wearing a black coat and a soldier's insignia. Daniel froze. Even from a distance, he knew. The way the young man stood, the way he held himself, it was unmistakable. His son. The boy turned, his eyes catching the light. They were Daniel's eyes, but colder, sharper, filled with something that made his blood run cold. The same eyes that once looked up at him with love in a distant memory now stared back with quiet hostility. "Father," the young man said. His voice was steady, calm, but beneath it, Daniel could hear something broken, something trained. "You are alive," the son continued. "I was told you betrayed us, that you caused the fire, that you killed her." Daniel's heart lurched. Killed her? The lie had gone deeper than he ever imagined. "No," he said softly. "I never wanted that. Your mother, she loved you more than her own life. Craven lied to you. He used us all." The boy's expression did not change. Behind him, the two men shifted, their hands near their weapons. The rain fell harder, the sound merging with the pounding of Daniel's heart. "Craven showed me the reports," his son said.
He said you tried to sell your designs to the enemy.
That the explosion was your punishment. Daniel took a step forward. "Son, listen to me. The explosion was his doing. I tried to stop him. I tried to save everyone." "Stop," the boy snapped, his voice trembling now. He reached into his coat and pulled out a gun. "Do not take another step." Daniel froze. The barrel was steady, but the hand holding it shook. He could see the conflict burning behind his son's eyes, the war between truth and the lies he had been fed all his life. Daniel lifted his hands slowly. "I am not here to fight you," he said softly. "I came to bring you the truth." He pulled the photograph from his pocket and held it out, his fingers trembling. The boy's eyes flickered as he saw it, the picture of himself beside Craven. He hesitated. "Your mother kept this," Daniel said. "She died to protect you. She wanted you to know who you really are." The young man's breath hitched. For a moment, the hardness in his face broke, replaced by something raw, human, afraid. But then, behind him, one of the men stepped forward, whispering in his ear. The moment shattered. "Do not listen to him," the man hissed. "He is trying to turn you. He is the reason your mother is dead." The boy's hand tightened on the gun. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the ruin around them like a graveyard of steel bones. Daniel's heart pounded as he took one last step forward. "If you're going to shoot," he said, his voice shaking, "then look into my eyes when you do it. And tell me if you still believe I am your enemy." The boy's hand trembled violently. Tears mingled with the rain on his cheeks. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then a shot rang out. For a second, everything froze, the rain, the wind, the world itself. Daniel staggered, but not from pain. He looked down. The bullet had not hit him. One of the men beside his son had fallen, clutching his chest. The boy had turned the gun. Daniel's eyes widened. The second man drew his weapon, but before he could fire, the boy moved again, shooting twice more. Both men dropped, their bodies hitting the wet concrete with a hollow thud. Silence returned, broken only by the rain. The boy dropped the gun. His knees gave out, and he fell to the ground, shaking. "I did not know," he whispered. "They told me you were the monster." Daniel ran forward and pulled him into his arms. The boy clung to him, sobbing against his chest. For the first time in 16 years, father and son were together, not as enemies, but as survivors of the same lie. And in the distance, as lightning split the sky, a shadow moved among the ruins. A figure watching from the darkness, smiling faintly. Craven.
Alive.
And waiting. The storm finally began to fade. The rain slowed to a soft drizzle, washing the blood from the concrete, cleansing the earth where pain had lived too long. The old factory, once a place of fire and death, now stood silent, its shadows trembling beneath the weight of what had just happened. Daniel held his son tightly, his heart breaking and healing all at once. The boy's shoulders shook as he cried, the years of lies unraveling in his father's arms. No words could mend what had been lost, but in that moment, they both understood something deeper. Truth had survived, even through betrayal. "Listen to me," Daniel whispered, his voice trembling with love and exhaustion. "What they took from us, we will rebuild. Not with hate, not with revenge, but with the truth your mother died to protect." The boy nodded weakly, his tears mixing with the rain. He looked up, his eyes no longer filled with confusion or rage, but with something Daniel had not seen since he was a child: innocence. "Will we ever be free of them?" he asked softly. Daniel glanced toward the dark ruins, where the last flicker of lightning revealed a silhouette watching from afar. He knew that shadow, that smirk, that stillness. Craven. A chill went through him, but he smiled faintly.
"For now, no," Daniel said.
"But one day, the world will know what he did. One day, truth will bury men like him. And when that day comes, son, I want you to stand in the light, not the fire." He placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, steady, firm. "Promise me, you will live. Not to fight the past, but to protect what your mother believed in, love that cannot be killed by lies." The boy's eyes glistened. "I promise." In the distance, Craven's figure began to fade into the darkness, swallowed by the storm's last breath. The world would hunt him. But Daniel knew revenge was no longer his path. He had already won the only battle that mattered. He had found a son. Together, they turned away from the ruins. The sound of the rain softened into a rhythm that felt almost like peace. The sky began to clear, revealing stars that shimmered faintly above the broken city. Daniel stopped for a moment and looked back at the factory. He thought of Lena, her voice, her courage, her sacrifice. A single tear rolled down his cheek. "I found him," he whispered into the wind. "I kept my promise." A gust swept through the ruins, bending the tall grass, carrying her memory into the night. For the first time in 16 years, Daniel felt something he thought he would never feel again: hope. As dawn crept over the horizon, father and son walked side by side through the mist. The light caught their faces, turning the world golden, warm, alive again. The pain had not vanished, but it had meaning now. And in that meaning, they found peace. When they reached the bridge, Daniel stopped. He turned to his son, handing him the old photograph of Lena. "Keep this," he said quietly. "She will guide you when I cannot." The boy took it with trembling hands, holding it close to his heart. He looked at his father, eyes filled with gratitude and grief. "I will make her proud," he said. Daniel smiled, tired but peaceful. "You already have." They stood there for a while, watching the river carry the dawn's reflection toward the distant city. A new day had begun, a day born from loss, but breathing with the promise of life. And as the screen fades to black, a single voice, Daniel's voice, echoes softly, filled with love, pain, and the truth that binds them all. Sometimes, life burns us to the ground not to destroy us, but to give us a chance to rise again. The fire does not end us. It reminds us that even in ashes, love still breathes. Soft piano music begins. The image of the river lingers, the willow tree swaying gently, a photograph resting against its roots, and two figures walking into the sunrise. The camera pans upward to the golden light breaking through the clouds. Then, Daniel's final words appear on the screen. "For those who still believe in love, forgiveness, and truth, never stop searching." Some stories end in pain, but the heart always finds its way home. Clapperboard if this story touched your heart, if you felt the pain, the hope, and the fire that love can endure. Subscribe now. Join this channel to witness more stories that reach into your soul, make you feel every heartbeat, and remind you that every ending is just another beginning. Broken Heart Fire, subscribe, like, and share, because stories like this deserve to live forever in hearts like yours.